The European Commission's decision to weaken its landmark 2035 combustion engine ban represents one of the most significant policy retreats in the EU's recent climate agenda. This shift from a 100% zero-emission target to a 90% emissions reduction goal, while allowing plug-in hybrids and synthetic fuels, reveals deep structural tensions in Europe's industrial policy at a critical inflection point in the global automotive transition. The policy reversal exposes Europe's fundamental strategic contradiction. While automakers lobbied for flexibility to bolster industrial competitiveness and protect supply chain resilience (CNBC), the move paradoxically risks accelerating Europe's competitive decline. Electric vehicle sales have reached over 50% market share in China for 5 consecutive months through 2025, with year-to-date market share at 51% electric. Chinese battery manufacturers control 68.9% of global EV battery installations from January to October 2025 carbon credits. Chinese automakers received approvals for 83 new passenger car models in 1 year, while Volkswagen received 6 and Nissan 2 rest of world. Chinese EV development cycles take 20 months compared to 40 months for traditional manufacturers rest of world. The speed gap. China isn't just ahead in volume. It's accelerating in innovation velocity. This 2x speed advantage in product development creates a compounding competitive advantage that policy protection cannot overcome. Europe's auto industry employs nearly 14 million people and accounts for about 7% of Europe's GDP, France 24. The policy change reflects political pressure from Germany, Italy, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Bulgaria. The European People's Party leader Manfred Weber, who claimed the 2035 ICE ban was a serious industrial policy mistake, Euronews. However, this represents classic innovator's dilemma dynamics, protecting legacy assets at the expense of future competitiveness. Ford announced a $29.4 billion write-down while axing several EV models the driven. Traditional automakers are already struggling. Giving them more time to delay the inevitable transition may simply extend their decline. The most damaging aspect isn't the 10% emissions allowance. It's the signal of policy instability. Capital allocation crisis. Companies that invested billions based on 100% electrification targets now face stranded assets and uncertainty about future direction. Competitive disadvantage. While Europe debates and delays, BYD sold more than 130,000 vehicles outside China in November alone, nearly 4 times higher than the previous year carbon credits. Innovation slowdown. Resources diverted to maintaining legacy ICE and hybrid platforms reduce R&D for breakthrough EV technologies. The argument for technology neutrality sounds reasonable but masks a strategic error. Biofuels don't scale, limited supply, high costs, questionable carbon neutrality. Plug-in hybrid reality. Recent EU data shows that hybrids use 490% more fuel than manufacturers claim, France 24. Capital misallocation. Every euro spent improving ICE efficiency is a euro not invested in battery technology, charging infrastructure, or software platforms. The China comparison. China didn't achieve 51% EV market share through technology neutrality. It picked a winner and executed with industrial precision. The UK faces a critical decision point. Industry leaders unanimously warn against following Europe's example. Multiple UK industry leaders argue this is precisely where regulatory independence should matter. The UK's zero-emission vehicle mandate could become a competitive advantage rather than a burden if it attracts investment seeking policy certainty. It accelerates cost reductions through scale. It positions the UK as the stable European EV hub. Analysis indicates weakening the mandate could cost British families up to £1,600 more annually in running costs. The cumulative impact on motoring costs could reach £40 billion over time. Just over 16% of new vehicles sold in the EU in the first 9 months of 2025 run on batteries, France 24, showing market growth despite perceived challenges. Near-term, divergence and confusion. Market fragmentation. EU countries will interpret the 90% target differently, creating regulatory complexity. Investment hesitation. Major battery and EV infrastructure projects will be delayed pending clarity. China acceleration. Chinese manufacturers will increase European market share, particularly in EVs, while European brands focus on hybrids. UK decision point. Britain will face intense lobbying but likely maintain stronger targets, creating a natural experiment. Medium term. Reality reasserts itself. Economics overwhelm policy. Battery electric vehicles already account for 31% of China's passenger vehicle market electric, and cost advantages will become undeniable. Hybrid transition costs. European automakers will face double costs, maintaining IC platforms while also developing competitive EVs. Infrastructure consequences. Slower EV adoption delays charging network development, creating a negative feedback loop. Consumer preference shift. As EV total cost of ownership falls below ICE globally, European consumers will demand electrification regardless of policy. Long-term, the cost of hesitation. Industrial restructuring. European auto manufacturers will face severe consolidation as Chinese competitors dominate the EV segment. Supply chain displacement. CATL maintained 38.1% of global battery market share, powering both Chinese brands and global giants like Tesla, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen carbon credits. European dependence on Chinese battery technology will deepen. Employment transition. The 14 million auto jobs will shift anyway, but delayed transition means less time for workforce adaptation. Climate impact. Transport emissions reductions will lag, potentially requiring more painful adjustments elsewhere to meet 2050 targets. The fundamental paradox. The policy change aims to protect European auto industry competitiveness, but will likely achieve the opposite. Technology transitions follow S-curves. Once EVs pass 50% market share, the transition accelerates exponentially. Learning curves favor scale. China's EV market penetration skyrocketed from 6.3% in 2020 to 48% in 2024 solar tech, creating massive cost advantages through manufacturing scale. Network effects compound. Charging infrastructure, service networks, and consumer familiarity create self-reinforcing adoption cycles. Software and autonomy. The future of automotive is increasingly about software and autonomy, areas where Chinese EV makers are aggressively innovating. Historical parallel. This mirrors how Japanese manufacturers disrupted American automakers in the 1970s, 80s. Detroit initially responded with protectionism and half measures rather than fundamental transformation. The result? Decades of declining market share and eventual bankruptcy for major players. For policymakers, don't compound the error, avoid further dilution, maintain pressure for electrification. Focus on enablers. Instead of weakening targets, strengthen support for charging infrastructure, grid upgrades, and workforce transition. Create certainty. Establish clear, long-term frameworks that allow industry to plan with confidence. Support innovation. Direct resources toward breakthrough technologies rather than sustaining legacy platforms. For industry, accelerate, don't delay. Use any flexibility to speed EV development, not extend IC production. Vertical integration. Learn from BYD's model. Control more of the value chain. Software first. Recognize that future automotive value is increasingly in software, autonomy, and services. China strategy. Instead of competing head-on in low-cost EVs, differentiate on premium features, brand heritage, and European manufacturing quality. For the UK, hold the line. Maintain the ZV mandate as a competitive advantage. Infrastructure sprint. Aggressively expand charging networks, especially for residents without driveways. Attract investment. Position the UK as the stable, predictable European EV market. Skills development. Invest heavily in retraining programs for the IC to V workforce transition. Conclusion. The uncomfortable truth. The December 16, 2025 policy reversal reflects political reality but ignores economic inevitability. Electric vehicles reached a tipping point in China, with over 50% market share often viewed as a threshold that quickly leads to EVs dominating the entire market, as seen in Norway, where EVs went from 50% in 2020 to 90% by 2024 electric. Europe now faces a choice. Use this breathing room to execute a dramatic acceleration in EV competitiveness, Or watch the 10% combustion engine allowance become irrelevant as market forces drive faster electrification anyway, but with Chinese rather than European vehicles. The energy transition expert perspective. This policy change represents a failure of industrial strategy, not a pragmatic adjustment. Successful energy transitions require clear direction, sustained commitment, and acceptance of short-term disruption for long-term advantage. Europe is doing the opposite, seeking short-term relief at the cost of long-term competitiveness in what will be a multi-trillion-dollar global industry. The irony? By 2035, the 90% target may prove more stringent than necessary because market forces will have already driven beyond it, but the competitive damage from this decade of hesitation will be irreversible.